Jenna woke up on her birthday to the soft gray light streaming through her window. It wasn't the kind of morning that made her excited. It wasn't filled with the usual birthday chaos of balloons and cake, or people singing happy birthday. There were no calls, no surprises, just the quiet hum of her house as always. She glanced at the clock. It was just past 8 in the morning. Her mother had already left for work, her footsteps long gone from the house. Jenna didn't mind. She understood. Her mother worked long hours to keep everything going, but it didn't make days like today any less lonely. Her room was still. The only sounds came from the faint rustle of the trees outside and the occasional passing car. It felt like the house was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen, but nothing ever did. Jenna got out of bed slowly, her feet hitting the cold floor. She sighed and shuffled over to the small dresser by the window. She looked at the old picture of her grandmother on the shelf, her only family member who ever made her birthday feel special. Grandma used to make her favorite pancakes and sing happy birthday in that funny voice that always made Jenna laugh. But Grandma was gone now. Jenna walked over to the window, watching the world outside. Other kids were probably getting ready for school, excited about the day ahead. Jenna used to wonder if anyone else felt like this, like their birthdays were just another day to get through. She brushed her hair and got dressed, pulling on a faded t-shirt and jeans that she always wore on days when nothing seemed important. She didn't want to make a big deal about it. It was just another day. After a while, Jenna made her way downstairs. She opened the fridge and the cold air hit her face. There was nothing special in there, just leftover pasta and some fruit. She grabbed an apple and sat at the kitchen table, biting into it slowly. The silence around her felt almost deafening. She couldn't remember the last time anyone had made a birthday cake for her. Or the last time someone had said, "Happy birthday, I'm glad you were born." Jenna thought about her friends at school. Well, she didn't really have any close friends. There were kids she sat with during lunch, kids who sometimes smiled at her in the hallways, but nothing deeper than that. She wasn't the type of person who fit into any group. She wasn't funny or loud like some of the other kids, and she didn't have a ton of hobbies to talk about. She was just Jenna, the quiet girl who liked to read and spend time alone. She finished the apple and set it down on the table. Her phone buzzed. Jenna's heart skipped a little. Maybe it was someone remembering her birthday? Maybe it was a friend texting to say something nice. But when she checked, it was just a reminder about an assignment due at school. Her shoulders slumped. It didn't feel like anyone cared today, not really. She picked up her phone again, scrolling mindlessly through social media. Everyone else seemed to be having a good time, smiling in pictures with their families and friends. Jenna quickly swiped past them, feeling the familiar sting of being left out. She didn't want to seem bitter, but it was hard not to. She hated how social media made it all seem so easy for everyone else. Happy faces, perfect families, exciting celebrations. Where was her happy face? Jenna thought about the cake her grandmother used to make. It was her favorite part of every birthday, the soft, sweet vanilla cake with thick frosting. Grandma would make it just for her, decorated with colorful sprinkles. She could almost taste it now, the sweetness melting on her tongue, the warm feeling of knowing someone loved her enough to make her something special. But those days were gone. She went back to her room, picked up her school bag, and started going through her books. The silence in the house felt heavy today, like it was wrapping itself around her. Her mother wasn't here to remind her that birthdays were important, and she was too shy to try and make a fuss about it. Jenna wished she could be one of those kids who didn't mind being alone, who didn't feel the emptiness of a birthday without celebration. Maybe it was because she had never really had that kind of connection with anyone. The idea of being surrounded by friends, of people singing her name and making her feel special, just seemed so distant. It was like a dream she couldn't quite reach. Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. Jenna looked up, surprised. She wasn't expecting anyone. She went downstairs, unsure of who it might be. When she opened the door, standing there was Mr. Harris, the neighbor who lived next door with his son, Luke. Mr. Harris wasn't someone Jenna knew very well, but he was always kind when they crossed paths. He was a single dad, and sometimes he would say hello when he was out working in his garden or taking Luke to school. "Hi, Jenna," he said with a warm smile, holding out a small cupcake and a card. "I thought I'd stop by and wish you a happy birthday. I know you're probably busy, but I wanted to make sure someone remembered today." Jenna blinked, taken aback. No one had ever done something like this for her. She wasn't used to this kind of attention, and it made her feel both grateful and uncomfortable. "Thank you," she said quietly, taking the cupcake from his hand. It was a simple thing, but it meant more than she could explain. Jenna looked down at the cupcake, its small pink frosting making it look cheerful despite the quiet of the day. Mr. Harris smiled again, his eyes softening. "You're welcome. I know it's not much, but I just wanted to make sure your day was a little better." Jenna nodded, unable to find the right words to express how she was feeling. Mr. Harris didn't wait for her to say anything more. He just turned and walked back to his house, leaving her with the gift. It wasn't much, but in that moment, it was everything. Jenna stood in the doorway for a long time, staring at the small cupcake in her hand. For the first time that day, she felt a small glimmer of something. Maybe it was hope, or maybe it was just the realization that someone noticed her. It wasn't the grand celebration she had always dreamed of, but it was something real. It was a reminder that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't as invisible as she felt. Jenna closed the door, the quiet house still around her, but for the first time, it didn't seem so empty. She walked to the kitchen table, sat down and set the cupcake in front of her. She didn't know what the rest of the day would bring, but in that moment, she wasn't so sure it had to be as lonely as she had always thought. Jenna sat in the kitchen, staring at the cupcake. She didn't eat it right away. Instead, she ran her fingers over the soft frosting, as if trying to absorb the kindness behind the small gesture. She wasn't used to people thinking about her this way. No one really had before. She took a deep breath, then carefully peeled off the wrapper and took a bite. The sweetness of the cake was simple, nothing extravagant, but it was exactly what she needed. Jenna felt a warmth spread through her chest as she chewed. It wasn't the kind of warmth that came from something huge, like a party or a crowd of people. It was something quieter, softer. She hadn't realized how much she had missed it. She looked at the card that Mr. Harris had given her. It was just a plain, homemade card with a simple message written in neat handwriting. "You are not invisible. You matter. Have a wonderful year ahead." The words hit her harder than she expected. Jenna's throat tightened, and for a moment, she just stared at the card, trying to understand why it meant so much. It was just a few words, but they felt like they were saying something she didn't hear often enough. Jenna set the card down and wiped a stray tear from the corner of her eye. She had always been alone on her birthdays. Her mother was busy, and even if she wasn't, they didn't have much family nearby. The only presents Jenna ever received were from herself. Books, art supplies, things she could enjoy on her own. She didn't mind being alone, but on days like today it felt a little too quiet. She thought about what Mr. Harris had said, how he mentioned that he knew what it was like to feel invisible. Jenna wondered what that really meant. How could someone like him, with a son and a life that seemed so full, know what it felt like to be alone? It seemed impossible. But then, she remembered how he always took a moment to wave or say hello when they crossed paths. Maybe he understood more than she realized. It wasn't long before she heard footsteps approaching from outside. Her eyes flickered toward the window and she saw Luke, Mr. Harris's son, walking toward her house. He had a big smile on his face like he always did, and he was carrying something in his hands. Jenna felt a little nervous. She wasn't sure what to say to him. She didn't know him very well, other than that he was a few years younger and often spent time playing outside. But today things felt different. She had never really been around kids much, especially not ones who were her neighbors. The whole idea of talking to Luke felt like it came with a strange kind of pressure. Would he think she was strange for being so quiet? Would he notice how different she was from the other kids at school? Before she could talk herself out of it, Luke knocked on the door. "Hey, Jenna," he said cheerfully, his face bright as he stepped into the kitchen. "I brought you something." Jenna blinked, surprised. She hadn't expected Luke to be a part of her birthday, at least not in this way. He wasn't really part of her life, just a friendly face she'd see sometimes when they were outside, but nothing more. She was still figuring out how to react to this unexpected visit. Luke handed her a small wrapped gift. It wasn't large, just a tiny box, but it felt so genuine. "I thought you might like it." "Dad said today was your birthday." Jenna hesitated, unsure of what to say. She'd never received a gift from a kid her age before, and she couldn't remember the last time someone had taken the time to choose something for her. Her heart skipped a beat, and she felt the sudden urge to hide the nervousness bubbling inside her. "Thank you," she finally said softly, holding the little gift in her hands. Luke smiled and then, as if sensing her uncertainty, quickly added, "It's just something small. I know you like drawing, so I thought this would be good for you." Jenna was touched. She slowly unwrapped the gift and found a small set of colored pencils inside. They were the kind with soft tips, perfect for sketching, and Jenna knew they were probably expensive for someone like Luke to pick out. She had always loved drawing, and this felt like the kind of thoughtful gift she would have picked out for herself. But receiving it from someone else? That was new. And it made her feel something she didn't know how to name. "These are really nice," Jenna said, her voice cracking a little as she looked up at him. "Thank you so much." Luke's grin widened. "I'm glad you like them. I know how much you like to draw." "You're really good at it." Jenna's cheeks flushed and she couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. I don't know about that," she said, looking down at the pencils. "I just do it for fun." Luke didn't seem to mind. He just nodded eagerly. "I like drawing too. Maybe we could draw together sometime." Jenna was caught off guard by his offer. She wasn't used to kids asking her to spend time with them. It was like he didn't see the awkwardness or the quietness that Jenna often felt about herself. It felt different from how she usually expected people to treat her. He wasn't pushing her to be more than she was. He was just being kind, offering friendship without any expectations. "I'd like that," Jenna said quietly, her voice a little more sure than before. Luke nodded happily and then looked over at the kitchen table, where the cupcake sat, half-eaten. "Is that for your birthday?" he asked curiously. Jenna nodded, picking up the small cupcake again. "Yeah, it's from Mr. Harris. He gave it to me this morning." Luke looked thoughtful for a moment. That was nice of him. "My dad says sometimes you don't need a big party to have a good birthday. It's the little things that matter." Jenna was surprised by how much his words made sense. She'd always dreamed of having a big party with tons of people. But in this quiet moment with just Luke and the simple cupcake, she realized something. Maybe he was right. Maybe the little things, like a card or a thoughtful gift, were the things that really made a birthday special. Maybe she had been looking for the wrong kind of happiness all along. "Yeah," Jenna said, her smile small but genuine. "Maybe it's the little things." Luke smiled back. "I think so too. And you're welcome for the pencils," he added, looking proud of himself. Jenna laughed softly. "I really appreciate it, Luke." They stood there for a moment, the kind of silence that wasn't awkward but comfortable. Jenna felt a warmth in her chest that had been missing for a long time. For the first time in a while, she didn't feel invisible. It was a simple thing, but it was enough. Luke looked toward the door. "Well, I should go, but maybe I'll see you around and we can draw together sometime." Jenna nodded. "I'd like that." As he left, she sat back down at the kitchen table, looking at the small gift he had given her. It wasn't a huge, life-changing moment, but it felt like a step toward something more, toward not being alone. Maybe things didn't have to be perfect to feel good. Maybe the little things, the quiet moments, could be enough. And for the first time in a long time, Jenna believed that maybe, just maybe, they were. The next few days passed quietly, but something had shifted inside Jenna. The gift from Luke and the kindness from Mr. Harris had started to settle in her heart. It wasn't like anything big had changed, but Jenna found herself feeling different. She still woke up to the same empty house, the same quiet days, but there was a small warmth she hadn't felt before. She found herself smiling more often, even if it was just at a thought or a memory. That small moment with Luke and the gift he had given her had made her realize something. She wasn't invisible. For the first time, it didn't matter if she had a huge birthday party or a big crowd. What mattered was the small moments, the little connections, the things that made her feel seen. A few days later, Jenna found herself walking out of her house, the sun a little brighter than usual. She had spent the morning drawing with her new set of colored pencils, sketching a small scene of a peaceful garden. The idea of sitting in a peaceful place with nothing to do but enjoy the quiet felt comforting to her. As she walked outside to take her drawings to the recycling bin, she noticed Mr. Harris in his yard trimming his bushes. It wasn't unusual to see him working outside, but today something felt different. She hesitated for a moment, unsure of whether or not to approach him. After all, what could she say? But something inside her told her to at least try. So she walked up to the fence where he was working. "Hi, Mr. Harris," she said, her voice a little shy but not as uncertain as it used to be. Mr. Harris looked up, surprised, but he smiled warmly. "Hey, Jenna." How's your day going? Jenna thought for a second. It's going okay. I've been drawing a lot lately. The pencils you gave me. They're really nice. Mr. Harris smiled even bigger. I'm glad you like them. I thought you might. There was a moment of silence, but it wasn't uncomfortable. Jenna found herself feeling more at ease than she usually did in situations like this. It was like they had created a small space of understanding between them. Something unspoken but real. Are you doing anything today? Mr. Harris asked after a pause. Jenna felt a little surprised by the question. Most people wouldn't bother asking her what she was doing, especially since she didn't have any big plans. She thought for a moment, considering how to respond. I was thinking of going to the park, she said, her voice more certain than she felt. I haven't been in a while. Mr. Harris raised an eyebrow. That sounds nice. You know, my son Luke loves the park. He's always dragging me there when he gets the chance. You could join us if you want. Jenna hesitated. She wasn't sure if she was ready to go hang out with Luke. Even though the offer seemed so simple, what would they even do there? She wasn't sure she knew how to make the kind of small talk kids her age seemed to have down. But then she remembered the way Luke had smiled when he gave her the gift. How comfortable he made her feel in that moment. Maybe this wasn't such a bad idea after all. That sounds nice, Jenna said, surprising even herself. Maybe I'll come by later. Mr. Harris smiled again, giving her a knowing look. Great, we'll be there for a little while. See you soon then. Jenna nodded and walked back toward her house. The idea of going to the park with Luke felt strange, but not in a bad way. It was just unfamiliar, and that made her nervous. But that nervousness also made her curious. Maybe it would be nice to have a change of scenery, to do something different. She wasn't sure what to expect, but she was starting to realize that sometimes it was the unexpected things that turned out to be the best. A little later, after putting her drawings away, Jenna grabbed her jacket and headed for the park. The sun was setting, casting a warm orange glow over everything. It wasn't too hot or too cold, just a perfect afternoon for a walk. As she made her way there, Jenna thought about how she'd always kept to herself. It was easier that way. Less chance for disappointment. Less chance for feeling out of place. But now, with Mr. Harris and Luke offering her this small invitation, it felt like a door was opening, just a crack. Maybe it was time to step through. When Jenna arrived at the park, she saw Mr. Harris and Luke sitting on a bench near the playground. Luke was holding a soccer ball, tossing it up and down, looking up every so often to check if anyone was watching. Mr. Harris, as usual, was reading a book. He looked up as Jenna approached and waved. There you are, he said. I'm glad you came. Luke was starting to think we'd have to play soccer by ourselves. Luke jumped up excitedly when he saw her. Hi, Jenna, he called. Do you want to play with us? Jenna felt her stomach tighten. She wasn't sure about playing soccer, especially since she wasn't good at sports. She shook her head quickly. I don't know how to play soccer that well, she said. I'm not really good at it. Luke didn't seem to mind. That's okay. We can just kick it around. No pressure. Jenna stood there for a moment, unsure of what to do. It wasn't just about the soccer ball. It was about being around other people. The thought of spending time with kids her age was new and uncomfortable, but somehow it also felt nice. It felt like something she'd been missing, even if she couldn't put it into words. After a deep breath, she walked toward them. All right, I'll give it a try, she said, feeling the words leave her mouth before she could overthink them. Luke smiled and handed her the ball. Awesome. Just kick it to me and we'll see how you do. They spent the next hour kicking the ball back and forth, laughing more than Jenna expected. She wasn't good at soccer, but that didn't matter. The game wasn't about winning or losing. It was about being together, sharing a moment without judgment. Jenna found herself laughing along with Luke, feeling the sun warm her skin and the air fill her lungs with something she hadn't known she needed. It wasn't perfect and it wasn't what she had imagined, but it was real. Eventually, they both grew tired and sat down on the grass. Taking a break, Mr. Harris closed his book and joined them, stretching his legs out as the evening sky started to turn dark. Jenna felt comfortable in a way she hadn't in a long time. The quiet, easygoing nature of the afternoon felt like it was exactly what she needed. Thanks for inviting me, Jenna said, looking at Luke. She couldn't believe she was actually saying it, but it felt right. I had fun, Luke grinned. I'm glad. We should do it again sometime. Jenna nodded, feeling a little surprised by how much she had enjoyed herself. She realized something then. It wasn't that she had to be good at everything, or that she had to know exactly how to fit in. Sometimes it was enough to just be there, to show up and be present, and that was more than enough. As the night wore on, the park started to empty out. It was getting colder, and the lights from the playground began to glow softly in the twilight. Jenna said goodbye to Mr. Harris and Luke, and as she walked back toward her house, she couldn't stop smiling. It wasn't the kind of big, grand event she had once imagined for her birthday. But it was something else, something better. It was the beginning of a new chapter. A chapter where she wasn't invisible anymore. Jenna knew that she hadn't solved all her problems and that there would still be hard days ahead. But today had been different. It had shown her that sometimes even the smallest connections could make a world of difference. And maybe, just maybe, it was time to let a few more doors open. The next few weeks felt like a new chapter for Jenna. She was still the quiet girl, still the one who liked to be on her own. But now there was a difference. Something had changed inside her. She didn't feel invisible anymore. She didn't feel like her life was just a string of lonely days. And the small things, those little moments with Mr. Harris and Luke, had started to add up. It was as if she could see the world in a way she hadn't before. It wasn't just about the park or the colored pencils Luke had given her. It was more than that. It was the way Mr. Harris had taken the time to check in on her, to remember her birthday, to offer something so simple but so meaningful. Jenna realized that all the things she'd missed out on, birthday parties, friendships, didn't have to look the way she'd always imagined. They didn't have to be big, noisy events with a crowd. Sometimes they were quiet moments shared with people who cared. On a Saturday morning, Jenna found herself sitting at her desk, sketching another picture. This time it was a scene of a forest, the sun shining through the trees, the leaves swaying gently in the wind. It wasn't much, but it was hers. She had always been drawn to nature, to the way it seemed so alive and yet so peaceful. She lost herself in the drawing, letting the pencil guide her thoughts when she heard a knock on the door. Jenna stood up, surprised. Who could be here now? It was too early for anyone to be visiting. When she opened the door, she was surprised to see Mr. Harris standing on her porch, a big smile on his face. "Hey, Jenna," he said, looking excited. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything, but I was wondering if you wanted to join us for a hike today. Luke's been asking about it, and I thought it might be fun for all of us." Jenna blinked, a little taken aback. A hike? That was something completely different. She had never been on a hike before, and the idea of being outside for hours, walking along a trail, felt both thrilling and a little intimidating. She wasn't sure if she was ready for it, but something about Mr. Harris's invitation felt genuine, like it wasn't just about the hike. It was about spending time together, about continuing this new connection that had started with something as small as a cupcake and a few words of kindness. Sure, Jenna said, her voice a little uncertain. "I don't know much about hiking, but I'll give it a try." Mr. Harris's smile grew wider. "That's the spirit. Don't worry, it's an easy trail. We'll take it slow. Luke's been talking about it all week, so I think he'll be thrilled." Jenna nodded, still a little unsure but also excited by the idea. She had always stayed close to home, kept to the same routine. But now, she was starting to feel like maybe it was time to try something new. Maybe it was time to see what else the world had to offer. She quickly grabbed her jacket and made her way to the door. Mr. Harris was waiting for her at the car with Luke, who was bouncing around with his usual energy. "Ready?" Mr. Harris asked as Jenna climbed into the back seat. "Yeah," Jenna said, feeling the flutter of nerves in her stomach. She wasn't sure what to expect, but there was something exciting about the unknown. The drive was short, and soon they arrived at a trailhead in a small, quiet part of town. The area was peaceful, surrounded by trees and soft, grassy fields. The sky was clear and the air was fresh with the scent of pine and earth. Jenna took a deep breath, feeling a sense of calm settle over her. Maybe this wouldn't be so bad after all. Luke grabbed his water bottle and started bouncing ahead, eager to start. "Come on, let's go," he called to Jenna, who felt a little hesitant at first but then followed. Mr. Harris kept a steady pace, walking beside Jenna. "The trail's not too long," he said. "It's a nice, easy walk. I figured it might be something different for you." Jenna smiled slightly. "Thanks for inviting me. I didn't think I'd be the hiking type." Mr. Harris chuckled. "Most people don't. But there's something about being outside, you know? It's different than being in the house all the time. And Luke's been wanting someone to walk with him." I think he just likes the idea of dragging me along on all his adventures, Mr. Harris added with a laugh. Jenna couldn't help but laugh too. Yeah, I can see that. He's got a lot of energy. As they walked along the trail, the sounds of nature surrounded them, birds chirping, leaves rustling in the breeze, and the occasional distant sound of a stream trickling through the woods. Jenna felt the tension in her shoulders ease. This was different from anything she had done before, but it was a good different. There was something calming about being surrounded by trees, the air thick with the scent of the forest. She didn't have to talk constantly or try to keep up with anyone's expectations. She could just walk, breathe, and take in the moment. Luke had already run ahead, calling back to them every few seconds, asking if they were coming. Mr. Harris and Jenna kept at a slower pace, enjoying the quiet. After a while, they reached a small clearing near a stream, and they decided to take a break. Mr. Harris spread out a blanket and they sat down to rest. Jenna looked around, taking in the beauty of the place. The sunlight filtered through the trees, casting soft patterns on the ground. She realized that this was exactly what she had needed, a moment of peace away from the distractions of everyday life. Luke sat beside them, sipping his water. "This is awesome," he said, his face flushed with excitement. "I love coming here. It's so quiet." Jenna nodded, feeling the same way. She had never been the type to seek out nature, but now that she was here, she realized how much she had been missing. There was something peaceful about it, something that made her feel more connected to the world around her. It was different from the city streets, the noise of everyday life. Out here, it felt like time moved slower, and everything was a little clearer. As they sat in the clearing, Mr. Harris began to talk about his life, how he had come to this town, how he had become a single parent, and how sometimes life didn't turn out the way he expected. Jenna listened quietly, not used to opening up to people, but there was something about Mr. Harris that made it easy. His voice was calm, steady, and he didn't push her to say anything she wasn't ready to share. "I think sometimes we get so caught up in what we think our lives should look like, we forget to appreciate what we have," Mr. Harris said, his eyes distant for a moment. "It's not always perfect, but it's real, and that's enough." Jenna thought about his words. It was true. She had spent so much time wishing her life could be different, imagining what it would be like if she had a big group of friends, if her family was closer, if things were just easier. But maybe the little things, the quiet moments, the small connections were enough. She glanced at Luke, who was now playing with a small rock by the stream. He had a smile on his face, his energy endless. Jenna realized that she didn't need to be like anyone else. She didn't need to follow some set of rules about what a perfect life should look like. She could just be herself, and that would be enough. After a while, they packed up and started heading back along the trail. The sun was starting to set, casting a soft glow over the trees. Jenna felt lighter, like something had shifted inside her. She didn't know exactly what it was, but she felt more at peace than she had in a long time. As they walked back to the car, Luke asked, "When can we come back here again?" Mr. Harris chuckled. "I think we'll make it a regular thing. It's nice to get out and explore." Jenna smiled, feeling a small excitement for the future. She wasn't sure where this new path would lead, but she was starting to realize that it didn't matter. She was ready to walk it one step at a time. That evening, as she lay in bed, Jenna thought about everything that had happened. She wasn't the same person she had been a few weeks ago. The girl who had felt invisible, who had hidden behind her books and drawings, was slowly being replaced by someone who could connect, someone who could be part of something. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, she felt like she was ready to face it. And that, Jenna realized, was enough. The weeks that followed felt like a blur of new experiences and quiet moments of growth for Jenna. Each day seemed to bring something different, a new opportunity, a new connection. What once felt like a routine of loneliness had transformed into something much fuller. It wasn't always big changes or grand gestures. Sometimes it was just small things, like the way Mr. Harris greeted her with a smile whenever they crossed paths, or the way Luke's energy seemed to fill the empty spaces around her. These moments, these tiny connections, had started to add up in a way she hadn't expected. It was another Saturday when Jenna found herself standing in the kitchen, looking out the window at the quiet street outside. It was a beautiful morning, the sun bright in the sky, but it wasn't the kind of day where Jenna wanted to sit around. She had plans today, plans that made her feel both excited and a little nervous. The day before, Luke had asked her to join him and Mr. Harris for another trip to the park. This time, instead of just hanging around or kicking the ball around like before, they had something else in mind, an art project. Luke had learned from his dad that Jenna liked to draw, and he thought it would be fun for them to all work on something together. It was a simple idea, really, but it felt like something bigger. It felt like an invitation into something Jenna hadn't had before, a chance to share something of herself with others. Jenna wasn't sure what she was going to draw. She had always drawn alone, usually in her room where no one could see. The idea of creating something with other people, especially in front of others, felt a little daunting. But as she looked out the window, she remembered how far she had come since that first, lonely birthday. She thought about the park, the hike, the time she'd spent with Mr. Harris and Luke. Maybe this was just another step, another opportunity to step out of her comfort zone. She took a deep breath and grabbed her sketch pad. It didn't matter what she drew. It wasn't about being perfect. It was about being present, about sharing a part of herself with the people who had become a small but important part of her life. When she arrived at the park later that morning, Mr. Harris and Luke were already there, sitting on the grass chatting and laughing. It was the same bench where they had sat the first time she came, and it was still as inviting as it had been that day. "Hey, Jenna," Luke called out, waving enthusiastically. He was holding a box of colored markers, already looking ready to get started. "Hi," Jenna replied, her voice a little quieter than usual, but not as shy as it used to be. She walked over and sat down next to them. "We're going to do something fun today," Mr. Harris said, looking at her with a warm smile. "Luke had an idea to make a community mural. We've got some supplies, and we thought it would be fun to work on it together." Jenna looked at the colorful markers and the large piece of paper spread out in front of them. It was a simple idea: draw something, contribute to the larger picture. But the thought of working alongside Luke and Mr. Harris felt different. It felt like an opportunity to open up in a way she hadn't before. "What should I draw?" Jenna asked, feeling the nerves creeping in. She wasn't sure if she had anything worthy of sharing with others. Luke, as usual, didn't hesitate. "Just draw what makes you happy. It can be anything." Jenna thought about that for a moment. What made her happy? What was it that she could share with them that felt real? She had always drawn nature, always felt a connection to the quiet beauty of the world around her. Trees, flowers, animals. It wasn't complicated, but it was hers, and maybe that was enough. She picked up a green marker and started to sketch a small tree, its branches reaching toward the sky. It was simple, but it felt right. She added a few flowers at the base, letting her hand move freely across the paper. Luke and Mr. Harris were already drawing too. Luke had started with a large sun in the corner, beaming down on the entire scene. Mr. Harris, with his calm, steady hand, was sketching a mountain in the distance. As they drew, the air around them felt light. There was no pressure, no expectation. It wasn't about creating something perfect, it was about sharing the moment, letting their imaginations run wild on the paper. Jenna realized that it wasn't just about the art. It was about the connection, the way they were all contributing to something together. It was a shared experience, one that brought them closer in a way that words alone couldn't. Luke leaned over and looked at Jenna's tree. "That's really cool," he said. "It's like the trees in the park." Jenna smiled, feeling a little shy but also proud. "Thanks. I like trees." Mr. Harris nodded approvingly as he added the final touches to the mountain. "Looks great," he said. "You've got a talent for this, Jenna. It's nice to see you so comfortable sharing it with us." For a moment, Jenna felt a warmth in her chest. It wasn't about being perfect at something. It was about being seen, being appreciated for who she was and what she had to offer. The idea that her simple drawing of a tree could be part of something bigger, part of a shared experience with Mr. Harris and Luke, made her feel more connected to them than she had before. They spent the next hour working on the mural, adding details here and there. By the time they finished, the paper was covered with a colorful scene. Trees, flowers, the sun, and mountains, all blending together in a way that made it feel alive. It wasn't a masterpiece, but it was theirs, and that made it special. As they sat back to admire their work, Luke grinned. "We did it," he said, his eyes shining with excitement. "It's awesome." Jenna nodded, her smile small but genuine. "Yeah, it is." Mr. Harris looked at the mural, his expression thoughtful. "I think we've created something really nice here," he said. Something that brings all of us together, Jenna agreed. It wasn't just the drawing itself, it was the experience. The way it had brought them closer, how it had made her feel a part of something bigger than herself. She had started out thinking she was alone, but now she realized that she wasn't. Not anymore. The rest of the day passed in a blur of conversation and laughter. They took a few pictures of their mural, then decided to take a walk around the park. Luke, as always, was full of energy, but Jenna felt lighter than she had in a long time. It wasn't just about the drawing or the day's activities. It was about the way she had allowed herself to be part of something. As the sun began to set, painting the sky with streaks of pink and orange, Jenna realized something. She had spent so much time wondering if she was enough, if she could ever belong, if she could find a place for herself in a world that often felt too loud and too fast. But now, surrounded by Mr. Harris and Luke, she felt different. She felt like she had found a place, a quiet, peaceful place where she could just be herself. When it was time to leave, Mr. Harris and Luke walked her back to her house. "Thanks for spending the day with us," Mr. Harris said. "It was really nice having you there." Jenna smiled, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. "Thank you for inviting me. I had a great time." As she stood at the door, ready to head inside, Luke gave her a thumbs up. "We should do this again sometime. You're really good at drawing." Jenna laughed, feeling a warmth in her chest. "Maybe next time I'll bring a few of my own ideas." She stepped inside, closing the door softly behind her. As she stood there, listening to the quiet of the house, she realized how much had changed. She wasn't invisible anymore. She wasn't alone, and that was more than enough. The days seemed to move more quickly now, as though time itself had decided to catch up with Jenna. She had always kept to herself, finding comfort in the quiet of her room, the solitude of her sketch pad, and the rhythms of everyday life. But now, there were moments that pulled her away from her familiar space, moments that made her feel alive in ways she hadn't expected. Jenna had come a long way since that lonely birthday. She had begun to realize that life wasn't just about filling the gaps of solitude. It was about connection, about finding those quiet moments with people who made you feel seen. Mr. Harris and Luke had brought something new into her life, something gentle and unexpected. It was a Saturday afternoon when Jenna found herself sitting on her front porch, the cool breeze tugging at the loose strands of her hair. It was one of those rare, clear days when the sky seemed endless, and the world felt still, as if everything was in perfect balance. She had just finished another drawing, a landscape this time, a sunset over a peaceful lake, and was trying to figure out how to bring it to life with color. She had gotten so used to drawing alone, but recently, she had started to look forward to the idea of sharing her art. She remembered how Luke had reacted to her tree drawing, how Mr. Harris had praised her talent, and how those small words had meant more than she had realized. She wasn't sure when it had happened, but she had begun to trust herself. It was as if, in a way, they had given her permission to believe in her own abilities. That afternoon, as she sat on the porch, there was a soft knock at her door. Jenna looked up, surprised. She wasn't expecting anyone. She stood up and opened the door to find Luke standing there, his face bright with excitement. "Hey, Jenna," he said, practically bouncing on his toes. "Dad's making pizza tonight, and he said we should all eat together. You want to come over?" Jenna blinked, unsure for a moment. It wasn't like she hadn't spent time with them before, but the idea of eating dinner together felt different. It felt more personal somehow, like she was being invited into their world in a way she hadn't experienced before. I don't want to interrupt anything," Jenna said, suddenly unsure of what to say. She wasn't used to being invited to someone else's home like this. Luke waved his hand dismissively. "No interruption. Dad's always happy to have guests. And it'll be fun. I promise." He gave her his best wide-eyed look, the one that made it impossible for anyone to say no. Jenna hesitated, then thought about it. She hadn't had a meal with anyone outside of her family in a long time, and the idea of being part of a simple dinner, a moment of connection, made her feel a little nervous but also excited. "Okay," she said, finally smiling. "I'll come over." Luke grinned, giving her a quick thumbs up. "Awesome. We'll see you there in a bit." As he skipped down the porch steps, Jenna closed the door behind her, feeling a mix of excitement and nerves. She wasn't sure what to expect from a dinner at the Harris household, but she was starting to realize that it didn't need to be perfect to be meaningful. She spent the next few minutes getting ready, choosing a simple outfit and brushing her hair. It wasn't a big event, but it felt like a small moment of something new, something different from the quiet, predictable days she was used to, and for the first time in a while, Jenna felt a little sense of belonging, a sense that she was starting to carve out a place for herself in the world. When she arrived at the Harris house, the smell of fresh pizza greeted her. The door was open and she could hear Luke's voice inside, excitedly chatting with his dad. Jenna stepped in, her heart racing just a little. "Hey, Jenna, glad you could make it," Mr. Harris said. Looking up from the kitchen where he was pulling a pizza from the oven, he looked genuinely happy to see her, and that small gesture made Jenna feel at ease. "Thanks for inviting me," Jenna said quietly, her hands clasped in front of her. "It smells great." Luke, who had been setting the table, bounced over to her. "We made your favorite. Cheese pizza, no toppings, just like you like it." He grinned up at her. Jenna couldn't help but smile. It was such a small thing, but it meant so much. "Thanks, Luke, that's really sweet." As they sat down to eat, Jenna couldn't help but notice how comfortable everything felt. There was no pressure, no need for forced conversation. They all just enjoyed the meal together, and the conversation flowed easily. They talked about everything and nothing. Luke's latest adventure at the park, Mr. Harris's work, and even a little bit about Jenna's own life. It felt normal, in the best possible way. For so long, Jenna had been used to keeping her thoughts to herself, staying in the background, hiding behind her drawings. But here, with Mr. Harris and Luke, she didn't feel like she had to hide. It was a simple dinner, but it felt like a small victory, a moment where she could just be herself and be accepted for it. After dinner, they sat together in the living room, the evening stretching out before them. Luke had already run off to his room to play, leaving Mr. Harris and Jenna alone in the quiet of the house. "You know," Mr. Harris said after a few moments of silence, "I'm really glad you came. We've enjoyed having you around." Jenna glanced at him, surprised by the sincerity in his voice. "Thanks for inviting me," she said again. I wasn't sure if I'd fit in." Mr. Harris smiled, his eyes kind. "You don't have to worry about that. You fit in just fine. I think we're both a little surprised by how much we've all enjoyed spending time together. It's been a good change." Jenna nodded, feeling a lump rise in her throat. She didn't know how to explain it, but these words meant more to her than she could say. It wasn't just about the pizza or the park or even the mural they had created. It was about the fact that for the first time in a long time, someone cared about her being there. Someone had noticed her, had taken the time to make her feel like she mattered. I think I'm glad I came too," Jenna said, her voice soft but genuine. "It's been nice spending time with you and Luke. I never really thought I'd get the chance to do something like this." Mr. Harris looked at her thoughtfully. "It's easy to forget that sometimes the small moments can make the biggest difference." Jenna let his words sink in. It was true. So much of her life had been spent waiting for something big to happen, waiting for a change, waiting for the world to notice her. But maybe, she thought, the change wasn't something that had to be huge. Maybe it was the small things, the quiet moments shared with others that made life worth living. The evening wore on, and eventually, Mr. Harris excused himself to finish some work. Jenna stood up to leave, feeling a sense of contentment she hadn't known in a long time. As she walked to the door, Luke came running down the stairs holding a drawing he had made. "Look, I drew a picture for you," he said, holding it out with a big grin. "I hope you like it." Jenna took the drawing, her heart warming as she looked at it. It was a simple picture of the two of them, her sitting on the park bench and Luke standing next to her, both smiling. It wasn't much, but it was everything. It was a gift, a piece of himself that Luke had shared with her. "I love it," Jenna said, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you," Luke nodded, his face proud. "I'm glad you like it." Jenna walked out the door, the drawing tucked carefully under her arm. As she made her way back home, she felt the weight of the evening settle in her chest, a quiet happiness that seemed to grow with every step. She had found a place for herself, a place where she belonged. And that, Jenna realized, was more than enough. The weeks that followed felt like a quiet, steady change for Jenna. Life was still full of the usual routines, school, drawing, quiet afternoons, but there was a new layer of warmth beneath everything. It was like she had stepped into a world that felt more alive, more connected. She wasn't alone anymore, and that made all the difference. It had been a few weeks since the dinner at Mr. Harris's house, and Jenna found herself looking forward to the small moments she shared with him and Luke. The park outings, The art projects and the dinners had become a part of her life in a way she hadn't expected. She had always kept to herself, but now, it seemed that her world had expanded and she was learning how to navigate it, one step at a time. One Saturday afternoon, as she was sitting at her desk, sketching another landscape, there was a knock at the door. It was a soft, polite knock, but it was enough to make her pause. Who could it be? She wasn't expecting anyone. When she opened the door, she was surprised to find Mr. Harris standing on her porch, holding a small basket of fruit. "Hey there," he said with a warm smile. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything. I brought over some fruit from the farmer's market. Thought you might like it." Jenna blinked, surprised by the kindness. "Oh, thank you," she said, her voice a little unsure. "That's really sweet of you," Mr. Harris chuckled. "It's nothing, really. Just wanted to stop by and say hi. Luke's at his friend's house, so I thought I'd bring you some of this. Plus, I was hoping we could chat for a bit." Jenna stepped aside to let him in, still a little taken aback by the visit. It wasn't that she wasn't used to seeing Mr. Harris, but it felt different when he came over without any plan or event. It was just a visit, a simple everyday kind of thing. "Come on in," she said, gesturing to the living room. "I was just working on a drawing." Mr. Harris walked in and set the basket down on the kitchen counter. "Sounds good. I'd love to see it." Jenna hesitated for a moment, unsure if she was ready to share. But something about Mr. Harris's easygoing nature made her feel comfortable. She picked up her sketch pad and showed him the picture she'd been working on, a peaceful view of a lake surrounded by trees, with soft light filtering through the leaves. "That's beautiful," Mr. Harris said, looking at it closely. "You've got a real talent. It's peaceful. I can almost feel the calm in the picture." Jenna smiled, feeling a little shy. "Thanks. I've been drawing a lot lately. It's kind of my thing." "I can see that," Mr. Harris said, his voice kind. "It's a gift, Jenna. Not everyone can capture the feeling of a place like you do." Jenna felt a warmth spread through her. It was nice to hear someone appreciate her art, especially someone who had taken the time to see it. She had always kept her drawings to herself, but now she was starting to feel more comfortable sharing them. "Do you think it's any good?" she asked, looking up at him. "Definitely," he said with a smile. "But the thing is, it's not just about being good. It's about what it means to you. And if it makes you feel something when you draw it, then it's more than good. It's real." Jenna thought about that for a moment. She had always been focused on trying to make her drawings perfect, but she realized that maybe it wasn't about perfection. It was about expression, about letting herself be seen through the work she created. Maybe that was enough. Mr. Harris took a seat on the couch and Jenna sat down across from him, still feeling a little unsure of what to say next. It was strange sitting here with him like this without any agenda, but in a way it felt natural, comfortable. It was just a conversation between two people sharing the space and time. "Are you doing okay?" Mr. Harris asked, breaking the silence. Jenna blinked, surprised by the question. "Yeah," she said slowly. I think so. It's been nice, spending time with you and Luke. I never really had this before." Mr. Harris nodded. "I get it. It can be hard to open up, to trust that things will be different. But you've done well. You've really come out of your shell." Jenna shrugged a little. "I didn't really have a choice, did I? You and Luke kind of made it happen." Mr. Harris smiled, his eyes gentle. "Maybe, but you were ready. Sometimes all it takes is the right people to help you realize that you don't have to do everything alone." Jenna looked down at her hands, feeling a little overwhelmed. She hadn't thought about it that way before. Maybe she had been ready for this change, for these small steps forward. She had spent so much of her life waiting for something to happen, but now it seemed that she was creating the change herself. "I never thought I'd feel like this," Jenna said quietly. "Like I'm part of something." Mr. Harris nodded, his expression thoughtful. "It's not easy feeling like you belong. But you do, Jenna. You belong with us. And it's okay to feel like you're not alone anymore." Jenna's throat tightened and she had to swallow before she could speak again. "I don't know what I would have done if you and Luke hadn't been there. I don't think I would have ever opened up. I was just stuck, "I know," Mr. Harris said softly. "But you weren't really stuck. You just needed a little push, a little nudge to remind you that you're not alone. And you took that step. That's the hardest part, taking the first step." Jenna nodded, the weight of his words settling in. She hadn't realized it before, but she was starting to understand. It wasn't about waiting for someone to come and change everything. It was about finding the courage to take those first steps, even when everything felt uncertain, and she had done that. She had taken the steps that had led her here, to this place of connection, to this new chapter of her life. After a few moments of silence, Mr. Harris stood up and stretched. "Well, I don't want to keep you from your drawing, but I'm glad we had this talk. I'm really proud of how far you've come, Jenna." Jenna looked up at him, feeling a mix of gratitude and something deeper. She didn't know how to put it into words, but she felt like she was standing on the edge of something new. "Something good. Thanks for everything," she said softly, still feeling a little shy. "I don't think I could have done it without you and Luke." Mr. Harris smiled. "You did it yourself. You just needed a little support along the way." As he left, Jenna sat quietly for a moment, thinking about the conversation, thinking about everything that had happened. She had been afraid to trust people, to let them in. But now it felt like the walls she had built around herself were starting to come down. Slowly, bit by bit, she was opening up, and it was the most freeing feeling she had ever known. Jenna picked up her sketch pad and began to draw again, the pencil moving across the paper as she thought about the future. It wasn't perfect, and it wasn't always easy. But for the first time in a long time, Jenna knew that she was part of something real. And that was enough. As the days passed, Jenna began to feel more at home in her own life. It wasn't just the time she spent with Mr. Harris and Luke that was changing her. It was something deeper, something she couldn't quite put into words. She had always been quiet, always stayed in the background, afraid to let anyone see too much of who she was. But now she was starting to feel like she could be herself and still be accepted. It was a strange, freeing feeling, one that made her feel like she was becoming the person she always wanted to be, but never knew how to find. That Saturday, she was sitting in her room, sketching another landscape when her phone buzzed. It was a message from Luke. "Hey, Jenna, we're going to the park later today. Want to join us?" Jenna smiled as she read the message. It had become a regular thing for them now, these little outings. It wasn't anything huge, nothing fancy, just a walk in the park, maybe a few games of catch or an art project if they felt like it. But every time she got the invitation, she felt a little thrill of excitement. It was the small moments like this that had become the highlights of her weeks. She quickly typed a reply. "Sure, what time?" Luke's response came almost immediately. "In about an hour. See you there." She put her phone down, feeling a flutter of anticipation. The park had become her place of peace, a place where she could just be without expectations. The thought of spending another afternoon there, surrounded by people who had become important to her, filled her with a quiet sense of happiness. When Jenna arrived at the park, she found Mr. Harris sitting on a bench, watching Luke play a game of tag with a couple of other kids from the neighborhood. Jenna waved as she approached, and Mr. Harris waved back, his smile warm and welcoming. "Hey, Jenna, glad you could make it," he said as she sat down beside him. "Thanks for inviting me," she replied. Her voice still a little shy, though not as much as before. She had started to feel more comfortable with him, with them both. "Luke's got a lot of energy today," Mr. Harris said, chuckling as he watched his son sprint around the park, his laughter filling the air. "I think he's ready to wear himself out." Jenna laughed, watching Luke for a moment. "He's always like that. It's nice, though. He makes everything feel more alive." Mr. Harris nodded, his gaze turning thoughtful. "Yeah, he's got a way of bringing energy into everything. But he's also a good kid, always thinking about others." Jenna glanced at Mr. Harris, sensing there was more to his words. "He's lucky to have you," she said quietly. She had noticed how much Mr. Harris cared for Luke, how much he put into being a good father. It was something Jenna had always admired. "I'm lucky to have him too," Mr. Harris said softly, his voice full of warmth. "Sometimes I think he teaches me more than I teach him." Jenna nodded, understanding what he meant. There were times when she had felt like she was learning from Luke as well. His unfiltered joy, his ability to see the world through fresh eyes. It was something she wished she could hold on to more often. It was easy to forget what it was like to look at the world with wonder when you were used to keeping to yourself. "Hey, Jenna, want to play?" Luke called over, still bouncing with energy. Jenna smiled, feeling a little hesitant. She wasn't one for games, not usually. But today felt different. Maybe it was the way Luke had asked, his face full of excitement, or maybe it was the warmth in the air, the way everything seemed to glow with possibility. She stood up, dusting off her jeans. "Sure, I'll play," she said, her voice more confident than she felt. "What are we playing?" "We're playing tag." Luke grinned. "You're it?" Before Jenna could protest, Luke dashed off, laughing as he sprinted toward the open field. Jenna hesitated for a second, then took off after him, feeling a rush of adrenaline as she chased him around the park. The wind whipped through her hair and she could hear Luke's laughter in the distance, his joy infectious. For the first time in a long time, Jenna felt free. There was no pressure, no need to be perfect. It was just about running, laughing, and enjoying the moment. She had always been so focused on staying still, staying hidden. But now she was learning how to let go, how to embrace the moments that came to her. After a few rounds of tag, Mr. Harris called them over. "How about we take a break?" he suggested, his voice light. "We've got some water and snacks in the bag. You two can keep running around after you catch your breath." Jenna and Luke sat down on the grass, both of them out of breath but still smiling. As Mr. Harris handed them bottles of water, Jenna took a sip, feeling the cool liquid refresh her. She looked over at Luke, who was already talking about the next game he wanted to play. "You know," Mr. Harris said as he sat down next to them, "it's not always easy finding these moments, finding time to just enjoy life." Jenna nodded, understanding what he meant. "I think I've forgotten how to enjoy things like this." "You're not alone," Mr. Harris said, his tone kind. "A lot of people forget, especially when they get caught up in everything else. But moments like this, they remind you what really matters." Jenna sat in silence for a moment, letting his words sink in. It was true. She had spent so much of her life feeling like she was on the outside, watching others have fun while she stayed in the background. But now she was starting to understand what Mr. Harris meant. Life wasn't just about the big moments, the ones that everyone talked about. It was about the small moments, the laughter, the shared experiences, the quiet connections that made everything feel meaningful. Luke ran off to play again, and Jenna watched him for a moment, feeling a warm, contented feeling spread through her chest. She had never imagined that something so simple could bring her so much peace. But there it was, just the joy of being in the moment, of being with people who cared about her. As the afternoon wore on, they sat together in the park, talking, laughing, and just enjoying the peace of the place. Jenna didn't know how long it had been since she'd felt this at ease. The sun was starting to dip below the horizon, casting a golden light across the park, and Jenna realized that she had never felt more connected to the world around her. She was part of something now. Part of this little circle, this small family that had invited her in without question, and that was enough.